A scary Ouija board experience. My name is Khalid, and I am 20 years old. I live with my grandmother, who is all I have left in the world after my father passed away before I was born, due to circumstances I don't have the courage to talk about. As for my mother, she died after being involved in a very serious car accident that took her life instantly. We managed to live somewhat comfortably, as my father left us several buildings and shops that we rent out for decent amounts. My scary story begins on the last day of the school year vacation. My grandmother wanted to go to the Holy Kaaba to perform Umrah, so she stayed alone at home until her return. She insisted a lot for me to go with her, but I didn't know why I was avoiding going with her at that time. One day, I was in my car and suddenly saw a familiar face smiling at me, a smile that reassures hearts and brings peace to them. I remembered it was Mohammed, my friend from middle school. He approached me, and despite the years that had passed since our separation, during which his family had moved to another town, causing him to transfer from the school we used to attend together since childhood, we recognized each other instantly. We were like twins before he left, as he is an extremely beautiful person with a kind heart and a soul that never tires. He is a true friend in every sense of the word, so we vowed to meet again, as we did before. Mohammed visited my house morning and evening, especially since my grandmother was traveling. One day, he came carrying a strange box labeled with the word Ouija in Latin. When I asked him about the nature of the box, he replied, "It's a global game used by Westerners to communicate with spirits. Players prepare questions for the spirits, and the spirits move the cup attached to the game to form words in response. Players place their hands lightly on the cup, which moves to form words or numbers using the letters. I bought it from a street vendor in Scotland. My curiosity led me to try it, especially when I saw its appearance and the mystery hidden within it. I had to pay $15,000 to get it. I was surprised by my friend's condition. All this amount for a game that seems to bring nothing but fear and horror to the hearts. After his long insistence, I agreed to play with him. When he asked me about the spirit I wanted to summon, I eagerly chose the Fatimid Caliph, because I remembered the perplexity of historians about the mysterious death of the Fatimid Caliph, which made me feel capable of questioning his death and the secret behind its mystery, until today. Mohammed performed certain rituals with me before we started the game. He lit a red light, which frightened me somewhat. My fear increased when he began speaking in a completely incomprehensible language to me. We waited for about 10 minutes, but to no avail. Once, I confronted him, saying, "Mohammed, we haven't eaten anything at all, and you're further fraying our nerves with this silly game of yours." We immediately abandoned the game and went outside to eat something. After 2.5 hours, I returned home to rest, and as soon as I entered, my eyes fell on the game. Mohammed had forgotten it. Honestly, every time I looked at it, I felt scared, but I noticed something extremely strange about it. When we left it before going out, the cup was upside down, and when I returned, I found the cup flipped over. Someone tampered with the game after we left. For long moments, fear gripped me, and I wanted to dispel all his doubts from my mind. So, I called Mohammed to inquire from him to be sure. When I asked him, his words had a profound effect on me, like a bolt of lightning striking from the sky. He replied, "The cup cannot take this form by itself unless the desired spirit is present after its preparation. May God forgive you, my friend. At that moment, I knew I was in serious trouble, and only my Creator could save me. I began to feel that someone was observing me and watching me wherever I went in the house. I couldn't find a way to rid myself of all these fears except by going to my bedroom. There, I read verses from the Quran to reassure my heart. Afterward, I tried hard to sleep, but I couldn't. After a long attempt, I finally fell into a deep sleep, but it lasted only for a short while until I woke up to a strange sound. It sounded like someone trying to open the door of my bedroom. I found the electricity cut off, and as someone who dislikes darkness immensely, this situation was unsettling. I hurried to inform the police about the presence of someone in my house attempting burglary. However, when I told them that the electricity was cut off, they informed me that the power had not been cut. After approximately an hour, my doorbell rang. As I descended from my room, I saw the silhouette of an old woman. I approached her, thinking she was a thief, but I found her walking towards me with agility and grace that an old lady couldn't possess. As I got closer, I was startled by her features, which stopped my heart. Instead of returning to my room upstairs, where the keys were to allow me to exit the house, now haunted by spirits, I found myself screaming at the top of my lungs and banging on the door hysterically. Unfortunately, I didn't even feel myself due to the extreme fear that engulfed me. When I regained consciousness, the sun was shining brightly. I thanked God for my safety and momentarily wished that everything I had experienced was just a dream. It truly wasn't a dream, but a terrifying nightmare. I called my friend Mohammed and recounted the entire story to him, explaining how my house had become filled with spirits, all because of the cursed Ouija board. The next day, I also had to stay at home. I had very little money, which wouldn't be enough for me to stay in a hotel for the night. My entire body complained of lack of sleep and rest. I tried to sleep and spent the whole day sleeping, but as soon as night fell, I woke up to the same sounds I had heard the previous night. My blood froze in my veins. I wished I had gone to my friend's house or invited him to stay with me to avoid facing the same fate. When the doorbell rang, I hesitated a lot before answering it. Sometimes my heart tells me it's the work of jinn and demons, and sometimes my mind tells me to go and find out the real reason behind all this. In the end, I managed to overcome my fears and resolved to find out the cause, as waiting and guessing alone was an unbearable torment. As soon as I descended the stairs, the lights were off, so I mistook a woman again, but she wasn't as scary as before. There is no God but Allah. It was my grandmother who had returned from Umrah. As soon as I saw her, I threw myself into her arms to finally feel the safety and reassurance I had been deprived of since she left me. I recounted everything that had happened to me, explaining that the house had become haunted by demons. However, I never told her about the Ouija board that my friend Mohammed brought, so as not to upset her. My grandmother recited many Quranic verses before we slept. As for me, I slept in my grandmother's room on the floor. I persuaded her to sell the house because I couldn't bear to live in it again after everything I had seen. My grandmother understood the situation, and on the same day, we put it up for sale. Within a week, we received the money and bought a new house. You don't know that this is just the beginning, because by leaving the house, have I closed the door that I opened to myself, which was the barrier between me and the world of jinn and demons? If you think so, you are wrong. I admit that I am guilty of everything that has happened and will continue to be guilty in the future as well. But humans are inherently curious, and my curiosity has also been the cause of regret that will haunt me for the rest of my life. After we bought the new house, we began to gradually move our things from the old house. It was then that I noticed something strange. I found a peculiar silver box for the first time in my life. When I asked my grandmother about it, she told me it belonged to my late father. I didn't have time to open it, especially since I was in a hurry to leave the house and bid farewell to all the nights of suffering I had lived through because of it. The new house exudes comfort, tranquility, and peace of mind, while our old house was sold to some individuals who moved in, and its reputation spread for being filled with supernatural occurrences. Curiosity still grips me regarding my late father's silver box. I struggled to open it as the lock had rusted. Once I managed to open it, I found it filled with papers of great significance, all indicating that my father owned shares in European companies abroad, some of which are currently well known. My father's story, which I never had the courage to tell before, reveals that he was the son of a very humble man, raised by my grandparents. When my grandfather passed away while my father was still young, my grandmother took on the responsibility of caring for and educating him, always prioritizing Islamic teachings over worldly ones. My father graduated from university and joined a major company as an ordinary employee. But according to my grandmother, he excelled in every task assigned to him, which made my mother love and admire him deeply. My father proposed to my mother, who was the daughter of the owner of the company where my father worked. Her father classified him as greedy for her wealth. However, my mother sacrificed everything to reunite with my father. They married out of genuine love, but my mother delayed in bearing children for nearly 4 years. During this time, my father managed to build a name for himself in the world of major corporations, all through his own efforts, despite my mother's family not giving him anything. Everything my father achieved was solely through his own hard work. The world became narrow for my father, who went abroad to Europe after becoming indebted to the earth. Shortly after his departure, he sent a letter of apology to his mother and words of regret to his wife, expressing his inability to provide her with the comfortable life she had at her parents' home. He admitted that he lacked the wealth to ensure her happiness, believing that death was more fitting for a failure like him. My grandmother later heard the news of his suicide from foreign newspapers and was shocked beyond measure. How could he do such a thing, despite being raised on religious teachings? After this incident, my mother discovered she was pregnant with me. She felt she had wronged my father and was a major reason for his abandoning his life. She dedicated her life to me and my grandmother. However, fate intervened when my mother was involved in a car accident that claimed her life. At that time, I was only 2 months old. As you know, my grandmother raised me, and each of us found solace in the other. All that crossed my mind at that moment was to verify the authenticity of the stocks in the silver box. Through the assistance of internet experts, I was able to confirm the credibility of the documents. Then, I remembered a person known for his ability to summon the spirits of the dead as well as the Ouija board's capability to summon spirits. So I turned to this person after managing to contact him. My intention was to communicate with my father's spirit and inquire about the authenticity of the documents, which would grant me ownership of at least $10 billion, a sum not to be trifled with, correct? Indeed, that person assisted me. He performed extremely strange rituals that sent shivers down my spine, but they were brief. Soon enough, I saw my father, whose image I had become accustomed to seeing before my eyes. He looked at me with a gaze filled with astonishment and bewilderment. However, my greed pushed me to ask him, "Where are your riches and immense wealth?" Afterward, he looked at me with a gaze full of regret and disappointment, then departed. The person who summoned my father's spirit informed me that there was something strange about my father's spirit. After extensive research using some of the peculiar books he possessed, he told me that my father was alive, and due to my request for his spirit to be summoned, my father paid for my mistake with his life. Was it true that my father was alive, providing for us, and that because of my foolishness, he paid with his life? My search continued, and I discovered that my father was indeed alive after reading a news article about the death of an Arab businessman from a heart attack. That heart attack was caused by our summoning of his spirit while he was still alive. Summoning spirits is only permissible for the deceased. I still suffer to this day because of my actions. I visited many psychiatrists in hopes of finding a cure that would allow me to sleep, even for a few hours like other people. Do not meddle with the unknown, for it will cost you dearly.